Aurora didn't want to run, look over her shoulder, or hide in the city's shadows. But her father, in an act of unforgivable stupidity and cruelty, sold her to the gang that controlled her HAB unit. So here she was, running desperately, with 3 gang members hot on her heels. Her fate seemed sealed because her species was not built for endurance. While they were known for their speed and short bursts, they couldn't keep it up for long. Her pursuers were Vite insectoids, tireless and unyielding. Aurora stumbled into an alleyway, gasping for breath. It was a dead end. Her muscles were screaming in pain, her lungs burning from the effort, and her fur was heavy and wet from the rain. Was this it? 2 weeks of freedom, constantly hunted, and it all ended here. She looked around frantically, hoping to find something, anything, she could use as a weapon. But the only thing in the alley was the body of a homeless person. The gang members arrived seconds later, their mandibles clinking as they communicated. Their translators converted their alien dialect into galactic common. "The Lapidans are stupid and can't sense or remember terrain," said the largest one, standing nearly 6 units tall. Yeah, stupid and dumb," the smallest one echoed. "So, what now, brothers? What were our orders?" "Boss wants her whole and unblemished. Apparently, he has a fancy for her," the middle one replied, likely the leader of the group. Aurora cursed at them, her hand diving into her pockets. All she found was a small penknife. "Come on now, we aren't the bad guys. We're just the delivery boys. If you cooperate, we'll be nice and buy you some grub and a change of clothes," the middle one said. Aurora looked around desperately. There were a few windows above, but the city was mostly abandoned at this time of night. Her chances were shrinking to 0. Taking a deep breath, she screamed as loud as she could. "Salen, please save me." The 3 Vites pounced, their bodies casting a shadow over her, blotting out the light from the street like a veil of despair. She shut her eyes tight, not ready for what was to come. Then she heard a sickening crunch that made her snap her eyes open. 2 of the Vites had backed off. The smallest one lay on the ground, its head caved in. In front of her stood a tall alien, its back to her, fists clenched, one covered in the thick, ichor-like blood of the Vites. "I heard enough to know I can't sit back and watch. Not when you call out for help like that," the alien said. Its tone and clear voice revealed it to be a human. Aurora realized the homeless person she saw earlier wasn't dead. But in this society, he might as well have been. Humans were worldless, with no rights or protections in the Empire's territories. Their homeworld had been destroyed before the Empire found them. While tolerated, they were considered the lowest of the low, worse than the scum chasing her. Yet, this human had stepped in and saved her. Maybe if she played her cards right, he would protect her. "They have orders to kidnap me and sell me into slavery. Your kind doesn't stand for such practices. Please help me," she said, trying to sound as innocent and desperate as possible. The middle Vite quickly responded, "No, her father sold her off to pay his debt. We're just here to collect," standing a bit more relaxed now. Nadira gestured for her larger companion, Dorian, to do the same. "Besides, if you help us, we'll split the bounty with you. 4,000 credits can go a long way for someone like you, Darek." "I bet it would," Darek replied, but he pulled out a long, serrated combat knife. "But I'm not in the habit of going back on my choices, and I don't need money." He looked over his shoulder at Nadira, his eyes gleaming red with cybernetic enhancements. "Are you a citizen of the Empire?" She nodded hesitantly, unsure why he would ask such a random question. Her species' homeworld was intact and paid its tithe regularly. "Stay there. I'll deal with the trash," Darek said before charging at the Vites. Nadira had no time to ponder his choice of words as the battle unfolded before her eyes. To her shock and slight horror, Darek was in full control. It took him only a minute to dispatch the Vites. His combat knife seemed redundant as his fists were enough to crack the exoskeletons of the Vites. What he did could only be described as a slaughter. Darek ripped the larger Vite's arms and legs off before caving in its thorax with his boot. He sliced the middle one into 3 pieces with just 2 quick, effortless swings. Swinging the blade through the air to remove most of the blood, Darek then wiped it clean on a rag before sheathing the weapon. He looked over at Nadira and smiled softly. "Don't you worry, Rumi. I will protect you," he said as he walked back over. Nadira stared at him in shock, trying to recall as much information as she knew about humans. Her memory was limited, but she gleaned that the one in front of her, offering a hand, was male, taller than average, and most likely a former soldier. "Thank you, She trailed off, unsure of what she was meant to say. "My name is Dan Smith," he said, gathering his small collection of possessions. "I am Sadara Mouse, but my friends call me Sail," she responded, still unsure of what was happening. Her mind refocused on the word he used to address her. "What is a roomie?" He smiled wide. "Humans can't rent or own homes, so you are now my roommate. I have more than enough to pay for a few years and other things, but your name will be on everything. Deal?" he asked, extending a hand to her. She looked at the hand, recognizing the gesture as something void merchants used when they agreed on a bargain. Was living with a human worth the risk and stigma, or was she just being foolish? It didn't matter. This human was offering his skills and protection in exchange for a roof over his head, a sentiment she could agree with. She took his hand and shook it in one strong, direct motion. "Deal,"